So we've been on our journey for about 2 years, and it started when one of my teachers was fortunate enough to go in the first cohort of primary teachers out to Shanghai, and when she came back, she had lots of good ideas and was very excited about what she'd seen, and that gave me an interest and enthusiasm to look at it a bit further. So we worked on things, tried a few things out, teachers tried things out, and then the following September I decided it was something that I wanted to take on as a whole school, so it became a major priority on our school improvement plan, and we decided to roll it out across the whole school en masse about 6 months after we'd sort of tried out lots of the ideas and things. So like I say, we've been doing it for about 2 years now, and we feel that we've made really good progress. I think we're at the stage now where I can say it is embedded across the whole school from foundation stage right the way through to year 6. But as with lots of education, it's never a done deal and a complete job. So we're constantly working on it and refining it and trying to move things forwards even more.
Okay, let's go through the various elements that you've had to manage during that period. Firstly, sort of timetabling, school day, length of lessons and things like that. What changes have you had to make?
Yeah, some quite significant changes to the school. So we actually added in an extra 2.5 hours a week of maths into our curriculum, which is a substantial amount of time. We shortened the main maths lesson, so our main maths lesson is about 45 minutes, and that's where we do the key teaching, and then we do the fluency in a later session during the day. Sometimes that might follow the maths lesson in the morning, or it could be in the afternoon, where it's followed up. So yeah, with regards to changing the amount of maths we did, that's what we put in place. That obviously had impacts on timetabling, but we're a one-form entry school, and the staff all worked together on that, and we were able to make it fit.
So you slightly shorter lesson to 45 minutes,
Yeah.
but extra time in the school day for the maths fluency work.
Yeah.
Has that enabled you to create time where children who are falling behind can be helped?
Yeah, I mean within the 45-minute session, some of the teachers are able to give the intervention there. With the teaching assistants that we've got in the classroom, we've changed the way they work with the teachers and the children as well. So whereas before the teaching assistants were working with individuals, they might have been taking groups out of the classroom to work with them, to support them. Those children are kept in the classroom, and the teaching assistants, through the input we've put in as a school, they're able to offer some immediate intervention for those children, so they're getting that sort of same day intervention, which we think's been part of the success of what we've done. So that intervention does happen there. Some of the teachers have become very sort of competent at just being able to sort of very carefully take a little group away for a couple of minutes to give them some input and allow them to move on with the rest of the group. So all of the children are kept within the classroom during the time. During the fluency sessions as well, there's no new content being taught there. It's practice of things that children have done, or it's developing things that they've already got, and that does again allow some time for the teachers to provide some immediate intervention to those children that may have found something difficult in the main teaching as well.
Okay, what about inside a maths classroom? The arrangement of the room, the arrangement or division of pupils, how has that changed?
Yeah, well, I think if I just take the physical nature of the classroom, I mean, one of the things that my teacher Louise brought back from Shanghai was how the children all sat in rows facing the front, and as a school that was, it was quite an interesting conversation. Some of the teachers going, we don't want to go back to Victorian days or go back to that sort of thing. But what we did all decide on was that what was really important was that we could see the children's faces and we could see their eyes, so that teachers could judge much more clearly whether children were getting things, whether they were participating in the lesson. It allowed for a maths conversation, and that's what the classrooms feel like. It feels like a dialogue between the teachers and the children, going backwards and forwards, thrashing out the ideas until the teacher feels that the children have got it. So here at Glenfall, we don't have a hard and fast rule about every classroom being in rows. Some of them are. Some of them aren't, but what you will see in any classroom here is all of the children facing directly to the front, so the teacher can see their faces.
So, what about which children sit where in the classroom? How has that changed?
Well, what we've got in the classroom, we have we call it mixed attainment rather than mixed ability, and so the children are all mixed up. We don't have any ability groupings inside the classroom. We don't have our children identified as being more able or less able.
Did you used to have those groupings?
We did, yes, yeah. We had very distinct groupings in the classroom, and I think sometimes maybe 4 or 5 different groupings within the classroom. And that's something that the teachers have really embraced, because they've found that with regards to their planning and their preparation that they're not trying to spin 4 or 5 different plates at the same time. So although teachers initially resisted that or thought that it might not be a good idea, now they're working with it. They're much happier with that arrangement, and they do feel that by having that mixed attainment, some children that previously will have had their learning artificially capped by the teacher putting them into a group, we feel we've lifted the ceiling on that limit to learning, and actually every child in every maths lesson has the opportunity to achieve to the highest level. And on some days, particular children can give you a great surprise, and you just think, well, actually, if we were doing what we did a year ago, those children wouldn't even have been exposed to or given the opportunity to work on that math. So we found that's been one of the big successes of what we've done.
Now, you're a manager of a school, you're a manager of teachers, professionals who work in classrooms. Has what you expect of your teachers as far as their practice changed in any way?
With regards to the teachers' planning, that's been an interesting sort of development for the school as well, because teachers would have planned, they would have had their very formal lesson plan, identifying the ability groups and where they were going to teach what, where, and where they were going to give the input for that in particular group. So that's changed, but because of the structure of the lessons and where we've been, teaching a concept, we've been using the sort of the variation theory and negative variation and difficulty point, that we found that our lessons were having a sort of a natural flow to them, that they would have a hook and a bit of input at the beginning, and then the teacher would add some variation to that, and then they would do some negative variation of what it is and what it is not, and then there might be some sort of application of the knowledge that the children have learnt as well. And the way the teachers were structuring that was through using the PowerPoint as a tool, and that's something that Louise brought back from Shanghai, was how they did that. And initially, I was a bit like, oh no, not PowerPoint presentations for children, but actually, it was a really good way to structure what the teachers are doing. It keeps the teachers on track. It makes sure that clarity is there as to what's delivered, and the teachers stick very closely to what they've prepared in those PowerPoints. And through some staff meetings that we had, a discussion came about, well, if we're doing all this planning to prepare our sort of prepare and craft our lesson, and it does take some time as well, because they're looking at making sure they get the questioning right, they're looking at the difficulty point, that does take time. We came to a decision as a staff, and I was part of that staff meeting. The teacher said, if we're doing all this preparation to prepare the slides, can we not have to do the planning that we were doing previously? And what we felt as a school was that by doing that, those PowerPoints in themselves are the plans for the lesson. So I don't expect to see separate planning from my teachers. What I do expect to see when I go to see a lesson is that they're sort of following that format, and that I can see that the quality of the questioning, and that they've taken the time to identify the difficulty point, and that then that's following through into the lessons.
What about marking and the bigger assessment picture? Any changes there? What you expect from teachers?
I mean, with regards to marking, because of the nature of the lessons, a lot is identified, or the children's ability within a lesson is identified as the lesson progresses. So teachers have found that they don't have lots and lots of marking to take home. The lesson and the interaction that will have taken place in the lesson will have given the teacher an understanding of where those children are. The sort of the practice questions that they will have worked on, again, would be the evidence that would be there, and that is marked. With regards to ongoing assessments, that's something we're still working on at the moment. after the first year, and particularly with the Key Stage 1 staff, actually, when it came to providing evidence for moderation, they said that they found it quite difficult to sort of find all that work within the book. So we are using some sort of, some assessment tasks throughout the year that they're doing to sort of analyse, what's been taught, and it's, these things sort of, they develop, don't they? And it's, quite a simple solution's been found to something we found that was quite difficult, because what the teacher said, the evidence was in the books, but they had to spend a long time going through to find that evidence. So when we're assessing at the end of a unit of work or a piece of work, that work's done on coloured paper. Like I said, it's very simple. So when you're flicking through the books, if you see a blue piece of paper, you know that that's going to be the assessment for the work that they've done. And that, with the Key Stage 1 staff, allowed them, or will allow them this year, to find the evidence that the children have got those skills. So that's something we're continuing to work with, and then in the sort of the longer term as well, looking at progress. We're sort of doing some end of year assessments as well, which are a bit more formal, but that's just so that we can actually show progress from one year to the next.
Okay, let's move on to how you have enabled your staff to learn and collaborate. You had one teacher who went to Shanghai, who's had specific personal professional development through the Maths Hub, but you've got all the other staff. How have you enabled what she has learnt to be shared among other teachers, so that each of the teachers in the school, you've said this is now embedded in the whole school, has been able to learn at the same time as this one teacher who's had the really concentrated training?
I mean, it comes down to we have designated a lot of our inset time and staff meeting time to provide that training, and that comes back to, again, I think something that I felt was quite crucial, that if we were going to do this, it needed to be led from the head and the senior leadership team. We needed to be able to say, well, our school improvement plan is going to focus on this, for this year and possibly the following year. And I think by doing that, you can then designate your inset days and the training you do, and you're justifiable in what you're doing because it's part of your main plan. It's obviously been looked at by the governors. They're in agreement that they think that's a good thing for us to work on. So I think by having it led from the leadership team is really important, because the time can then be made available. So we've had lots of in-school training with Louise, who'd been to Shanghai. She provided some of that training. Some of my some of my other teachers had been to see sort of Maths Hub activities that are going on around the area. I mean, we're very closely linked with the Glow Maths Hub, so we were able to access lots of the activities that they were doing. We're also partners with the Balcarres Teaching School Partnership, and they have an annual teaching and learning conference, and sort of maths was a focus in there as well. And one of our inset days, which we took in November, the whole teaching team went to the teaching and learning conference. So it became a key part of our school improvement plan, I think is the best way I can sort of describe that. And we've just, we've had people come in to work with us. We've gone out and worked with other people, and I think it's that the leadership team making time available for teachers to go out and do those things. And I have to say, my staff have really embraced it here, and they've had a desire to want to move it forwards as well. So they've sought out opportunities for themselves. They've asked me, could they go to this meeting, or could they go to this conference? And then in-house, what we've done is we've supported that with using teaching assistants to help out. I've stepped into the classroom to help out and things like that. So it hasn't been a massive cost implication to allow those teachers to go out. We've had to be creative to allow those things to happen.
To what extent have you allowed the staff, who you said were enthusiastic, just experiment with this mastery stuff themselves, and to what extent have you tried to control what they've been doing?
Yeah, from March 2015 through to September 2015, I let the teachers experiment. It was September 2015 that we said, right, we're going to do it as a whole school. But from March to September, I let the teachers experiment with, trying a bit of variation, trying negative variation, trying sitting in rows, just trying lots and lots of different pieces. And I'd seen Debbie Morgan speak, where she uses a kite analogy of sort of letting the children go, letting them explore things, and letting them find things out and then bring it back down to the key learning point of where we're going with that. And I really like that as an analogy for the children, and I've used that with my staff as well, that what I wanted to do is let them go and try things. And I think that goes back to your question about access to training and things. I think that by having a go, they were trying things out, and they talked about things in staff meeting. They reflected on what they'd done, and they helped each other to fine-tune their teaching and to develop what they were putting forward. So the kite analogy I really like, and again, something I've used with my staff as well is that sometimes when you let kites go, the strings get tangled, and you have to sometimes pull everything back down again, untangle the kites, and work out which bits are important and which bits you need to maybe change and alter. And we've had to do a lot of that. We've had to say, well, that's not working. How can we make that work for our school? Taking just exactly what you see from the Chinese teachers or from the mastery approaches, you've got to make it bespoke for your school. I think it's very difficult to say I'm just taking that off the shelf and delivering it here. I think people need to really understand the elements of what they're trying to achieve and set out how they're going to do that.
How much of that have you had to explain to parents who have obviously got wind that something has changed in maths in this school?
Yeah, I mean, right from the beginning, we felt we needed to inform parents what we were doing. So, the parents were informed that one of our teachers had gone to Shanghai and the Chinese teachers had come back here, so they were aware of our involvement with things. But when we decided that we were going to go and implement this across the whole school, it was round about the same time that the changes to the national curriculum were coming into effect, the changes to assessment, and there was an awful lot going on in the educational landscape. So we felt that we'd got a duty to the parents to inform them as to what we were doing, and I have to say that was one of my worries, actually, that because of the things they would have been hearing in the media with regards to tests changing, levels going, and all those sorts of things, that we'd got a whole group of, well, every school would have whole groups of children or parents that were being told that their children were operating 2 years outside of their year group, and they were high ability children. And we just thought, well, that's all going to change. We're not going to be saying your child is working at the level of a level 5 child or working at the level of a year 5 child. They're working within their group. They've got real depth of understanding. We're working towards this mastery approach to teaching maths, and we felt that we would have a really hard job to explain that to parents. But when we got them in, we talked about it, we sort of explained why we were doing it, how it fitted with the national agenda, how we felt it was better for children's learning and that they would have a deeper understanding. They accepted it, and I was really surprised because I thought we might have a battle. But teachers and parents have really supported us along the way, and we're starting to get, we've had it for the last year now, really, parents just saying how they feel their children, they've got a love and enjoyment of maths, they've got a real depth of understanding. And I haven't, since we had that initial parents meeting, I haven't had any difficult conversations with parents.
None at all. Nobody's saying,
no.
You're holding my Tracy, my Becky, my Johnny back.
No, amazingly not. and I think that was something I was prepared for, and I thought we'd really have to fight our corner. And the parents, here, if they felt there was something they were not sure about or they were uncertain, they would come and talk to me about things or explore it further with the teachers. But I think because we were doing it as a whole school, all the teachers were on board, so any questions that may have gone direct to the teachers, they would have been getting the same consistent message from all of the teachers as well. So.
What about the pupils? Did they notice changes? And if so, what do they say about it?
Yeah, they've not really commented overly on it. I mean, they've happily gone along with it. I think children are very, very adaptable, aren't they? Anyway, and they do that. But what we have had from children is, they do have. We do feel they've got this love of maths, and they talk very positively about maths. The different techniques that we've used, we've done bar modelling and tens frames, and all use lots of different resources and materials, and the children are really enjoying and embracing using those different things, and they particularly like to be able to come up to the board and explain and be the mini teacher and explain to the other children how they did it, or you could do it like this, or this is how I did it. So it's been a really positive experience for the children. One thing we really wanted to think about for the children was that because they were going to be taught mixed attainment, and that they were all going to be mixed in, is making it clear, you know, how they were all, you know, some were going to, you know, where the challenges were going to come, and it might be easy for some of the bits of work you do might be easy, but other bits might be harder, and there might be things you have to really think about and go hard with. We were just quite concerned that some of the children that would have been previously, you know, in your lower ability groups or lower attainers, how they might feel that if they were doing something that was really hard, if they weren't getting success, how that might affect their self-esteem and their sort of ability to tackle maths. So we alongside the mastery, we've done a lot of work on positive mindset and, you know, and educating the children about making mistakes, and making mistakes is okay, and that if you make a mistake, it grows your brain, and you know, so we did a lot of work on the sort of the brain science, and you know, and that, you know, your brain does physically grow if you make a mistake and you have to think hard, and the children love that, because I think they think there's all these explosions going on in their heads, and they will say things like, oh, you know, there's been lots of things going on in my head today because I've made lots of mistakes, but I've really learned something, and that's, you know, that's been a really nice journey to have with the children. And lots of the feedback we're getting from their parents is they've just got this belief, this self-belief that they can do it and they can have a go, and it doesn't matter if I make a mistake. And that's been a massive shift. And we put it in place because we were worried that some of the children might be affected by doing it. And it's had, you know, the positives that have come out of it have been so strong and so rewarding, and you know, that it's been a bigger unexpected outcome, I think, of the whole work that we've done. But I think, you know, self-esteem and love of maths is massive in the school, and when we've done people conferencing, they just talk so positively about their maths experiences.
Okay, finally, some people might say self-esteem is okay, thinking positively is okay, but in the end, you as a head are going to want to see achievement go up, however that is defined. Are you beginning to see concrete signs that this is working in the way of children's achievements?
Yeah, I feel we are. I think in the first year we had a lot of anecdotal evidence, and that's great because it's often really positive, and you know, and it comes across really, you know, really well for the school. We get lots from the parents and lots from the children, and I was pleased we were getting that. But as a leader, I was thinking, well, doesn't cut the mustard with, you know, with Ofsted or with, you know, performance tables and things like that. You know, we need to start to see some results and things like that, and we are now. I mean, we had, you know, the new assessments that took place in 2016. You know, since we started our initiative, you know, our Raise Online and Fisher Family Trust is showing an upward trajectory since 2014 to 2016. You know, above going from just below the national average to being significantly above the national average. So in maths, yeah. And you know, and I'm confident that the work we've put in has had that effect. And you know, our results this year, you know, the children achieved over 80% attainment expected level in maths, which is obviously significantly higher than the national this year. So and they were a very interesting cohort of children. It was a cohort of 21, so each child obviously represented a high percentage. 3 of them didn't take the test because they were significantly behind. You know, I'm talking sort of 3 years behind their peers. So each child was worth an awfully high percentage. So you know, I've reinterpreted our sort of over 80% almost as 100%, because all the children that did sit the test, they all achieved what they needed to. Our progress is in line with you know, sort of the national levels as well. So I do feel it has had a big impact, and you know, the reason I can say that is that the cohort that went through last year, we weren't expecting them to perform as highly as they did.
Fine. SEN kids, you just mentioned every school's got kids who are just sort of, for one reason or another, probably always going to struggle with national expectations. Has mastery in any way affected the way that the school has dealt with those children and how they've achieved in maths?
I think you're right. Every child has got, every school has got children with special needs, and I think you just have to accept that. You know, like I said at the beginning, you have to you know, bespoke what you're doing for your children, and with those children, if their special needs are particularly profound, that they might need something a little bit extra. But we always start every lesson with every child having the same exposure. But I think you just have to make that call as a leader or as a teacher that, with some of those children, you do have to adjust it slightly, and I think you can't get away from that. I think you, as much as one might want every child to be in every mastery lesson, and that's what we have, probably 98% of the time. I think you do have to sometimes make those decisions. Say, this child needs something different because they are so far away from what the rest of the group are doing. We believe at Glenfall as well that over time, I think the gap will be less as the children feed through from the early years. We're only 2 years in. Some of those children previously, had 4 or 5 years of being taught through the old system, and the gaps were very large, and you can't just close those gaps immediately by taking on the mastery approach. But with the special needs children, we just say you've got to do what's right for the children, and if they, and I'm talking children with very specific special needs, they might just need to not be in the classroom for that bit, but they always start the lesson together.